Good morning, you're watching AWANI with me, Nina Rosman, and we're going to start with data centers, which are powering everything from AI to cloud services, but their footprint is getting harder to ignore. Today, we ask a bigger question. Can data centers actually become climate positive? Joining us is Eric Fan, CEO of Bridge Data Centers. We'll unpack what sustainability truly means for the industry, how players are managing energy and water concerns, and whether the sectors can grow responsibly while building talent and supporting the wider economy. So let's dive into the future of greener, smarter data centers. Thank you very much, Eric, for joining me. Firstly, talking about the growing and the booming of data center all over the world. Firstly, what does sustainability as in BDC's DNA really mean in the practice context?
Thanks, Mina. Thanks for having me. Right, I think really, at VDC, we actually pay a lot of attention in sustainability developments of the data center, right? I think first thing is really we have to be doer rather than a talker, right, in the sustainabilities. I think you'll be surprised to actually understand, right, in terms of, you mentioned about power, right? In terms of the content percentage of the renewable powers that we are using in our data center is actually far more than the other lines of industry in Malaysia, right? So that is I would say, pretty surprising number. So I give you for one example, one of the major data center hub we have built in Johor. Actually, we are using more than half of the energy coming from the solar energies. So that is already an incredible achievement. So I think that's sort of contrary to what people perceive, right, in the past, right, that data center is power intensive, requires a lot of power and facing some challenges on the power issues, right. I think second point is really, talking about the sustainability. I think the sustainability measures roadmaps itself has to be sustainable, right? So that means that you're not doing, let's say, a lot of fancy, keywords, fancy technologies, doing only small demos, but we pay a lot of attention on, I would say, the scalabilities of those sustainable technologies, right? That requires the company like BDC to stay vigilant in terms of the latest technology advancement, right? I take one example, previously, let's say 2 or 3 years back, most of data centers actually using lead-acid battery as the backup power solutions. We thought that these evolutions to more advanced and more sustainable solutions like lithium battery would take years to happen. But actually with the scale effect, with the advancement of the technology development, that actually happens a lot faster, right, in the space. So across the space right now in Malaysia, in our data center constructions, we are actually using the lithium batteries, which is more, long-lasting and sustainable solutions as a backup power, right? So that is just one example that you have to stay ahead of the curve of these technology advancements and making economic sense of those scalable sustainability measures.
All right, definitely for sustainability measures, we need the right and the correct framework and suitable for each. Maybe we cannot, it's not allowing us to look at the one size fit all, but from your observations, what does a good ESG framework for data centers players should look like?
Yeah, I think, well, I would say different company would have different, methodologies for these sustainability framework. But I think, for BDC, right, what is very important is that obviously you need to set up your sustainability goals, right? We have defined our sustainability goal as net zero by 2040. Obviously, you have to define your roadmap to achieve that goal. But what is, I believe, more important it's actually two factors. I think first is you have to create a strong, internal governance structures to actually ensure the company has close monitoring the progress, the implementation of those roadmaps. And secondly, I think equally important is to have constant review of your roadmap to the sustainability goals, because as a matter of fact, the industry is evolving so fast, in terms of the technology changes, right? You hear all the let's say, news from the industry, like the NVIDIA, GPU chipset advance from the, the Blackwell to Rubin, it's really jumping forward to new pages of the technology setup, right? So there's actually no crystal for data center players like us to tell what's going to happen in the next 20 years or so, right? So what actually matters is actually for you to review those technology roadmaps on a constant basis, right? And to be able to capture the latest advancements of these technology movements, to be able to implement in a scalable way of the most economic, sustainable measures in our company. And that's exactly what we are doing right now here.
Can we apply the same measures to one of these issues, as we see that some critics say data centers are causing great stress and high utility costs, and NGOs even warn that data centers consume too much water? How do we immediately respond to this, and how can players in the industry address this sustainably?
Yeah, I think you rightly mentioned the issues of power and water. It's true. I mean, data center sector is a main, I would say, consumer of the power and water. But I think there is some, let's say, unique features of the data center industries. I mean, if we talk about the power aspect first, right? And power, data center is actually creating a very stable demand curve of the power consumptions, right? It's true that we actually consume a lot of power. That power, unlike some of the other industries, which could be very volatile, a seasonal, but data center is actually creating a very stable, power demand curve, right? If actually those demands are properly planned by the utility companies, by the power generation companies that can manage those value chain, pretty well in terms of supply and demand. So it's not actually adding additional stress to the power supply, to the grid structures, right? And secondly, I think it's very important to mention the scale effect here, right? So in fact, the more power actually you're using, the larger the demand is, the larger those investment in terms of power generation and the grid infrastructure is going to be created, right? That actually spread a cost, I would say on the per unit basis, which could be effectively cheaper for all the consumers across the space. So data center, the demand on power does not necessarily create additional stress or cost elements in the power space. But I think what has to be monitored is that the actual demand, what are the actual credible demand from the data center, players? What are the, in some cases, that could be more like a speculative demand, in terms of power and water, right? In that sense, if the grid company or the power generation company are overbuilding those assets, eventually are not using this asset, right? That could create certain concerns and waste of the investment in the space. So I think for us, I think that is, on that aspect, is probably from the local authority, from grid companies, they need to pay more attention to.
And that is a very critical aspect that we should take a look into. And other than the concerns over the water and energy utilization and potential wastage, how does the data center industry contribute to local economy and talent development?
Well, we're doing a lot, actually. If you look at the sheer investment numbers we have, Bush Data Center actually invested in the past few years in total $2 billion, right, in Malaysia. That's a huge number, right? So we actually not only building the data center in the local space, we actually, optimizing, building the whole infrastructure for the surrounding neighborhood, right? I think the best is actually seeing the actual site that we are building, right, in places like Johor. We are turning, the original farmland into a really kind of mini city in a way. We're building the roads, we're building the water infrastructure for the local communities, which are benefiting all the surrounding areas, right? So there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of improvements in the infrastructure works. And also we are creating a lot of jobs here. I give you an example. In one of the major sites we're building, the peak numbers for the workforce we are utilizing on that side will be over 2,000. That's massive number of employment creation, right? And data center by nature is also highly demanded, multidisciplinary work, which requires talents coming from, all the fresh graduates or experienced talents, equipped with, let's say, mechanical, electrical, civil engineering experience. So creating a lot of, let's say, highly paid skilled job for those specialists, right? And so I would say a lot of space. We're working a lot with local universities to actually incubate, these talent pools to funnel the future growth for our company as well, right?
And probably my last questions, Eric. We know that everyone talks about climate positive, but what does it actually look like, especially in the year of we can save by 2040?
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the climate impact, right? Let's say 2040, right? Yes, I think, obviously the first goal for us to reach net zero, before we talk about the, let's say, climate positive subject, right? And I think that's already kind of very challenging. That requires the, all the work, efforts from the regulatory, from all the peers in the industry to reach that net zero target. But I think down the way, there's definitely rooms for the industry to become a really net contributors to the society, right? The subject like power, water, and there's a lot of rooms for the players to do in the space. Data center itself down the way could be also a source of power and water for the local community. The massive, let's say, energy storage applications in the data center can be also a tuner in the grid balancing. In some of the areas, probably not the case for tropical conditions like Malaysia, but also data center can be, for example, a source of the central heating functions for the local community. So there are many, many applications that down the way, beyond the net zero ambitions. Data center itself can be also a net contributors to the society at the same time, but we're also working on that path as well.
All right, again, I want to say thank you very much to Eric Fan for helping us understand on the data centers. We know definitely it's not easy. Probably many concerns in the future about water and energy utilization and potential wastage from this usage of data centers. But also, it's very important for us to monitor and measurement and see the correct framework for the ESG framework within the data center, so we be able to push forward all the development of not only the data center but also the talent and the productivity development of the data center. Again, I would say thank you very much to Eric Fan, the CEO of Bridge Data Centers. Definitely all of our discussion here will be featured in AstroAwani.com and across all social media platforms.